Today, I have with me Jami Albright. And Jami is a born and raised Texas girl and is the multiple award winning Amazon top 100 author of the Brides on the Run series and the Small Town Royalty series, two book series. And as she says, they're both sexy, swoony, and pee in your pants funny. So I love what she says too, is she says, if you don't snort with laughter, then she hasn't done her job. And this interview was delightful because she's going to inspire you because her story is so relatable. She was a mom and had to move due to her husband's job, lived in Texas all, as I said, all her life. But she was very ensconced socially in her town and with her kids, and they had to move. And so it really threw her for a loop. And she had a hard time making friends. In fact, she was repelling them, as she said. And so, which happens, right? If you're in a bad place, what happens? Yeah, you don't attract like positivity. And so, but it's hard to get out of that place. And so she found her way by just reading. It started with reading and going to the bookstore, a conversation with somebody, and then it opened up a whole new world for her and created this gift of writing, which, as she said, she was a thought of herself as like a crappy writer, terrible grammar, but she loved her story so much. And then she felt there was a story inside of her that she wanted to share. And the way that the way that evolved, and she goes through that process and shares it, to now like being an unstoppable woman who is so in love with her life and what she does. And it's just like a totally different, like 180 from the person that she was when she first moved to her town. A whole new set of friends that are so aligned with what she does in life. And so I'm very excited to introduce you to Jami. So let's go to the episode now. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And today I have Jami Albright from Houston, Texas, joining us. And I'm excited to talk to her. She actually applied to,
I did.
yes, to be on my podcast. And when I read her application, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to her because she is hilarious. And she's written 7 books in 8 years. That's like crazy to me. And she didn't start till she was 50. So I'm really excited. I think she's going to be really inspiring because like people just don't start because they think it's too late. So welcome to the program, Jami.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So
it's
tell us,
to be here.
Yeah, tell us, like, just give us, who you are, what you do. Fill us in.
I'm a self-published author. I prefer to say indie published because I don't do it by myself, in that I hire editors and cover designers and all of that. So it's kind of takes a village. And I'm the author of the Brides on the Run series and the Small Town Royalty series. They're rom-coms, they're sexy, swoony, pee your pants funny books. They're all set in small towns and in Texas, which, you write what you know, because I have 18 years of hick, as I say, because I grew up in a small town. And yeah, so that's
what prompted that idea. I mean, because like, I think of the Runaway Bride movie with Julia Roberts. Yeah. So
what happened was the way I started writing, I'll tell you that, because when we used to live in Austin, and then we moved to Houston when my kids were, in junior high and high school. And so I had all my great friends in Austin, and we moved to Houston. I think I was 43, and I was miserable, just so sad. And because I had no friends, and it's hard when your kids are older to meet people. And even though my kids were involved in activities, it's still different. And because my friends in Austin, our kids had grown up together, we had cultivated those friendships. And anyways, and then when we moved, my husband had his new jobs, all my kids made friends. And so I was kind of the odd man out.
And how old were your kids? How old were your kids at that time?
We had a 5th grader, a 7th grader, and a junior in high school. And yes, we got our names taken off the ballot for Parents of the Year that year because he
Oh
was
my gosh.
furious. I
Yeah.
know it was terrible, but I mean, it was job related and there was no choice. I mean, and my husband's job in Austin was going away and he moved to the corporate office here. And so we had to. And so, but anyway, so I was very sad and I started reading a lot. And my friend in Austin, she was my reading buddy. And so for years we read a lot of stuff. I mean, we started with Twilight. I call it my gateway drug into romance. And so
Yeah, and like, I want to ask you a
uh,
question about that
yeah,
series
yeah,
because I did read it too, and I
yeah,
never watched the movies though. But
no,
I
yeah.
didn't think she was that good of a writer. I mean, it got better,
Oh,
but the first
yeah,
book
yeah,
was like not very
yeah.
good.
No,
It's just a
everybody
good
says that.
story, I guess. Yeah.
I know. Everybody says that there was something about it that grabbed the attention. And so I always, because people say that about E.L. James as well with 50 Shades of Grey, but I will tell you right now, I am so grateful to both of those women because they opened up romance to an entire new generation of women and men. And so something about both stories was just so compelling that people could not put them down. I was one of those people with Twilight. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and 50
anyway,
Shades of Grey, I remember reading that and being self-conscious that I was
yeah,
reading it, like wanting to
I read them. I loved them,
wanting
but
to
it
hide.
wasn't this.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
what's wrong with that? Like, you can
Yeah.
read funny
Well, it's
books.
funny because my reading buddy called and we were reading it and she said, um, do you get the feeling that we've read dirtier books? And I said, oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. This is like that, you know what I mean? Because we had just sort of explored all of romance and we sort of both landed on the paranormal and or romantic comedy side. But when you first start reading, you read I did read everything. Anyway, so her birthday was coming up and I wanted to do something special. And I had always made up stories growing up, but I never wrote them down. I had horrible grammar. I mean, just abysmal. But I thought, you know what? Jennifer doesn't mind if I have bad grammar, and she doesn't care if I don't know where a comma goes or if I use them like condiments and sprinkle them around. I mean, she doesn't care. And it would be funny. So I started writing this story. Well, I pretty quickly wrote myself in a corner. And I was around 48 at this time, but it was just for fun. It wasn't serious. It wasn't anything. But I
So
wrote
just for your
myself in a
friend, you just
corner.
wrote
Yeah, just for my friend. It was no big
oh,
deal.
so
But
good.
it wasn't, yeah, like the whole thing wasn't terrible, but I didn't know what to do. I had read a lot, but I still didn't know how to structure a story. So I told her, I was like, I was going to write you a book for your birthday, but I decided not to. And I said, I don't know how. And she said, well, you have to now. So we loosely plotted the first book in my series, which is Running from a Rock Star. And so, which is kind of a fish out of water. He's a rock star. It's a wake up in Vegas, married. She's a small town Sunday school teacher. She runs away and he has to follow her.
So are
Anyway,
they all of the series running from something?
yes,
Oh,
running from a rock star, running with a sweet talker, running from the law, and running after a heartbreaker are the four in
that's
that series.
awesome.
And so,
I qualify
um,
for the running after a
yes,
heartbreaker.
me too. So we all.
Uh,
But fast forward a couple of years, I turned 50. I'm at dinner with my family, and what had happened was that I started that rock star book and I would write on it every once in a while, but it was just, I might go a month and then I'd go write, 500 or 600 words. But I had probably around 30,000 words just piddling over a course of a couple of years. And my computer crashed and I lost it. And I was
I
like,
had another
well,
guest that happened to
yeah.
her
And I
whole
was like,
book.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, well, I wasn't a writer anyway. But anyway, fast forward, I'm 50. I'm at dinner with my family and we're talking. I said, I think the only thing I regret is not finishing that book. And they, of course, were like, well, you should start it again. And I was like, no, like that's just too much. I can't. But a few months later, my daughter came in and said, Mom, I think your book is on this flash drive I found in my car. I have no idea why it was in her car, but it was. And I pulled it up and it was about 20,000 words of the 30,000 that I had written. So I thought, you know what, it's now or never. So I joined Romance Writers of America here in Houston, a local chapter. and I went, and I probably went, well, I went for about 4 or 5 months just talking about writing. I wasn't really even doing that much writing. I was just kind of getting into it, talking about it. And they had a critique group. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I got to do it. So I printed up my 10 pages and I met them at Panera Bread. And I had only really, I mean, I just didn't know any of these women hardly at all. I mean, I had been going to the meetings, but they're once a month. And, you know, I sat in the back. And so I didn't know you were supposed to email your pages. So I bring mine printed out. So I hand them around the table and they're reading them in front of me. And I'm eating my potato soup, trying not to throw up in front of all these people because I have no idea, you know. And one woman actually sort of threw it on the table and said, I don't know if I can do anything with this. And I went, but you know, I kept my shoulders up, kept my head up, and I said, okay. And then another lady said, wait, this is funny. Like, this is funny. And another lady said, it really is. And I want to know what happens next, but there are some problems because again, I didn't know how to structure a story. Plus my grammar was horrible. And
you know, and well, you know what that says to me though? It's just a reminder that what you do is not for everybody, but it's for somebody, you know,
somebody.
It's for somebody.
Yes,
and that was so good that,
a million times. So I started in May with that critique group. And I mean, they beat the hell out of me for 6 months. I mean, but they did it lovingly. Like they were like, this is good, but you've got to fix this, or this is how you do this. And so like one week they got me for run-on sentences. And then I fixed it. And the next week they got me for sentence fragments. I cried that week, but I waited till I got in the car.
But you know, isn't it kind of, isn't it analogous to like what an actor goes through?
Yes, yes.
Like you go to an audition
and
and that's like true rejection. And this is just like kind of mild rejection.
Yes, exactly. Actually, one of the women did say a sentence has a subject and a verb. I mean, it was just like, because I write like I talk. And if you read my books, it is very clear. Like my books are grammatically almost perfect because I spend a lot of money on editors, and I have gotten better, but I need an editor badly.
You know, you should be a script writer because that's what scripts are. Yeah.
Yes. And I like dialogue a lot. You know, I have to go back and add in the stuff on the wall and what things smell like and how things taste. Yeah. But anyway, 6 months after I joined that group, I won my first contest with that book, the first part of that book. But it took me a couple of years to finish it. And I co-wrote another book, like a little Christmas book with my critique partner. And there were 3 of us that kind of broke off and we did our thing. And we met every week. We were very faithful. And those 2 women really, I mean, they're the reason I'm here. I mean, they're the reason I have a career. They're amazing.
So they're the new friends that you met in Austin.
Yes.
So moving to Austin was like, change your life.
And it was, the weird thing was, it was like they became, like all my friends became writer friends. It was so strange, you know, because I just didn't have, and I am very outgoing. And in Austin, I used to say I was almost like the Pied Piper of friends. Like people wanted to be my friend. I mean, they liked me, but when
you're funny, everybody wants to be around funny. Yeah,
exactly. I moved to Houston and I told my husband, I said, it's like I repel people. And he said, that's ridiculous. After 6 months, he went, I think you may be right. I mean, there was just something about my humor and my something that just did not click with a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I teach this and it's so evident that when people start to get, you know, their frequent, it's all about an energy that you're putting out and you weren't in a happy place. So you're putting out this negative energy.
Yes, exactly.
And it's coming back to you. It's coming back to you. And then you started to like take steps, thank God, to do things that lit you up.
Get out of it.
And then that energy, like your vibe gets higher and then you attract those high vibe people. Yeah.
Right.
So good.
And you don't really know how negative you are until you start trying to be positive. And then you're like, dang, I got to work on this. So I attracted them. So I start, of course, my goal when I started writing was like everybody else, get a traditionally published contract. I mean, that's the way you do it. But we met a very successful traditionally published author who had just gone indie publishing or self-publishing. And she was like, they're going to take your money. They're not going to give you representation, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I still think I think I need that. I need that validation. But we put this little Christmas book out before I put out Rockstar. And, the minute it went up, we put it out self-published. And the minute it went up, I was like, I'm a writer. I don't need anybody to tell me I'm a writer. But of course, nothing happened. Like, I'm like, okay, who's going to buy our books? And it's like this little drop of water in this ocean of books. And so I asked a friend, I said, how does anyone get their book noticed? And she said, well, you should listen to this podcast. Well, it happened to be the Sell More Book Show podcast, which was actually like a news podcast. And I was like, well, this is good, but it's not really giving me the information I need. But they were talking about these guys, the SPP guys. It was a podcast called the Self-Publishing Podcast. And these guys were doing crazy things. Like at the time they were publishing a book from start to finish in a month. Like now people do that all the time in self-publishing, but they were just doing all kinds of things. So I started listening to podcasts. It was very good, very informative, lots of good information that I needed. But they said they were having a summit, a conference, and it was going to be relatively small, about 100 people. And it was in Austin. And I told my husband, I was like, I need to go to this. It's in Austin. I can stay with friends. I mean, and he's like, that's great. Like, how are you going to pay for it? And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. $500 is a lot. I'll wait till my book comes out, And so we have, because it was also Christmas, and, we have Christmas, we get back, and I get an email saying that a woman named Julia Kent, who's a romantic comedy writer, was going to be speaking at that conference. I had never read Julia, but it was my sign from God that I was supposed to go. And so I got a mileage check that I had forgotten about. I returned all my Christmas presents and I bought that $500 ticket. And it was the best $500 I've ever spent.
Aww. Oh,
So
that makes
I
me
go
so
to
happy. You never know where, if you just do follow the path that you're feeling aligned with, you don't know where money will come from. It can come.
No,
yeah.
It just was there. And I went to the conference, and my plan was to publish the book right after the conference, like in July. It was in May. And but in talking to Julia and another one of the authors there, they really suggested that I wait until I had at least 3 books. I didn't. I had 2. But also, it became very clear to me that I needed to learn this business, because it is a business. It's when you self-publish or indie publish, it is a business. And it's what I think keeps a lot of people from doing it, because they assume that if they go with a traditional publisher, they're going to handle all of this. Well, it's not necessarily true, but that's neither here nor there. I knew I wanted to go self-publishing, so I learned the business. Plus, I knew I wanted a good cover, a professional cover. I knew I needed editing, and I did not have the money for that. I had 2 kids in college. We were paying for a wedding. So I had saved the money for my cover, but when it came to editing, I didn't have the money. So I sold plasma for 2 months, 2 or 3 months to pay for my editing. So I would drive into Houston, sit at the plasma place for 2 or 3 hours, drive home. Sometimes I would go in the morning before work. And so I'd have to get there around 4:30 or 5 so I could get to work. But that's how important it all was for me.
You're so creative.
And, well,
I just like ideas.
Yeah. Or desperate. It's one of the two, desperate or creative. And but my whole point in saying that is, it is all I wanted. Like it was once I realized that I could put this book out, it became all I wanted. It was my sole focus, and I would do anything to do it. And so if somebody told me to run around the house naked with a chicken over my head, I probably would have done it, because I just I was getting advice from really smart people, and I figure if they take the time to answer my question, I should at least try it. And so I did. And one of the things that I was told was you need a newsletter, like you need an email list before you even publish your book. And I'm like, how do you do that? I don't have anything. But I was in a group, like a Facebook group, and they were doing a promotion where it was a preview. So a preview of the book. So I put it 3 chapters, but they said, do you want to be part of the preview? And I was like, absolutely. And then they said, okay, send us your link. And I'm like, what link? Because I had no idea. I mean, so I spent like Friday to Monday setting up my MailChimp, setting up the site where you put your preview on. You had to do that and connect it with MailChimp. I had no idea. I had 2 computers set up, one running YouTube and my computer working, trying to figure out how to do it. I finally had to get a friend on the phone, and she walked me through it. Well, Skype, she walked me through it. We were both drinking very heavily by the end of that weekend because I mean, I'm 50 years old. Well, at that time I was 52 years old, 53 years old, I guess, 53. And I've never done anything like this. Never in a million years did I think I'd be doing this. So, but it was just like, I was determined. My husband was in the other room and I am just cussing in here in my office because I just kept, well, first of all, it's not intuitive. Like there's some sites that are really intuitive. MailChimp to me was not intuitive. So I just didn't know how to do it. But I got it all set up and I had 1,200 people on my email list before my book ever came out.
That's amazing.
So
that's kind of like there's a lot of summits online where,
yes,
they want you on and you have to have an email list of so
yes,
much. And then people like meet you or, yeah,
yes,
I like how that works. And it's a great
yes,
way to build an email list. So question.
yes. I'm sorry. I've just been rambling. So
No, that's okay. But yeah, that was so good. What you said last segment there. When you were done, because the hard is always so overwhelming initially, and a lot of people give up because it's like, oh, it's too overwhelming. I'll never get this. But yet,
right.
it's like, how many times do we fall off a bicycle before we like get the
Yes.
balance? So,
Right.
how did that make you feel? Like getting that up and then seeing the list of 1,200 people? Like, how did you feel?
I I was overwhelmed. Like I think I cried when I saw, because I ran 2 different promotions with that preview. And the first one got about 80 people. And then the second one, when I opened it up and saw that there were like 1,100 people, I think I cried because I just could not believe that 1,100 people wanted to, or 1,200 wanted to see my book. So I started emailing them immediately. And that was about 6 weeks before the book came out. So I emailed every week and I would just tell, like first one, I told this story about how I accidentally put my daughter's pants on and thought I'd gained all this weight in a week because I got them buttoned and fit, but I couldn't figure out what was going on. It was just this whole thing. And because that is my humor, like, this is what you're getting from me. You're going to get this throughout the whole time,
Well, you're
kind of thing.
real. Yeah, you're
Yes.
not
And so
afraid to like be silly and stupid. Like,
right. And so that's really kind of how I approached it. But yeah, I mean, it was overwhelming. And then when I put that book out, the book went, so in Amazon, I'm in Kindle Unlimited. So that means I'm exclusive to Amazon. So I only sell on Amazon. But when I put that book up, that book went to 1,300, like in the whole store. There's 6 million books on Amazon, and I was 1,300. And I was a new author, but that was only because I had those 1,200 people that wanted that book. And then it just continued from there. And after the second book, I was able to quit my job to write full time. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
and
and
it's just
yeah,
continued.
yeah, I didn't even realize you had a job. I just assumed you were a stay-at-home
No, I
mom.
was
Yeah.
writing the first 2 books I wrote at 4:30 in the morning. Pretty
Wow,
much
that's even more
weekends.
impressive. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, so many hurdles. And so what did you do for a job?
I did hearing screening for newborns in the hospital, and I
Oh,
loved it. I mean, it was a great job until it wasn't. It was sort
well,
of
when you
like,
had something else that lit you up
yeah.
more.
And
Yeah.
when I was making twice what I was making doing that. It was sort of like, it's hard to take, just the normal job stuff
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
really
and
you
I
can do
think a
that.
series is a great idea because it keeps
Mhm.
people wanting more, right? Even though they're different
Yes.
stories. I have a
Yes.
one of the people that she was on my newsletter and she reached out to me just to like say, "Oh, you're so inspiring." And it was so nice. And I said,
Mhm.
we got into a conversation through email and she
Yeah.
said she was an author and I was like, "Oh, this was early on in my podcast. I said, "You should come on my
Right.
podcast." And
Yeah.
and I had not read a fiction book for years because I'm a
Mhm.
personal development. I read personal development all the
Yeah.
time.
Yes. Yes.
And
I know.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I used to love it, like the books we
Mhm.
talked about earlier. So she said she sent me her, I had her on the podcast
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
she surprise, surprise, sent me her book. And I loved it. I loved it.
Mhm.
And of course, now I'm hooked into the series. So
Right. Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, but I
Exactly.
love it.
And
Yeah.
that's, this the first series, the Bride series. Well, the way the Runaway Bride series, gosh, that's a long story to get to this answer. So after I finished the first one, I was starting to work on the second. Well, I was thinking about starting the second one, and my critique partner said, "I think Luann should be a runaway bride. That she's the heroine in book 2." And I said, "Well, yeah, but Scarlett's really a runaway bride." And we all just kind of stopped, and I went, "A runaway bride series," and they went, "Yes." And so that's how it all came about. It was
Oh.
very accidental. And
Oh.
so,
Well,
yeah.
that's
And
usually how
so,
stuff happens,
yes,
right?
very
Yeah.
serendipitous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It's when that light bulb moment comes in. It's like the
mhm,
universe delivered that to you at that
right.
moment. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, so you might have touched on this, but like if you were to think of the one thing that was the hardest thing as
Mm,
you kind of navigated into this new place of like I'm going to be a
mhm,
writer
right.
or I want to be a writer. I want to
Right.
birth this thing because it was really
Right.
like birthing a
It is.
baby. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
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 I mean, even the gestation period is about as
Yeah.
long, right?
It was like an elephant. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think so. 7 books in 8 years. That's not. That would be like 14 years. So yeah. So what looking back was the hardest thing that you felt that you had to overcome?
Interestingly enough, are you familiar with Clifton Strengths? So Clifton Strengths, people have different strengths. My number one strength is activator. So if I get an idea, I'm like, let's do this idea. Like it can be a problem sometimes because I leap before I look. But so going to that critique group was pretty hard. I mean, that was humiliating at times, but I knew nothing. I kind of came in with no ego because I knew I didn't know anything, which really helped as far as survival. It helped me survive it and learn. But I think the hardest part has come later. Like once you have some success, it's hard because you're kind of always clinging to it. You're the fear that it will go away, or the fear the next book's not gonna be as good. That I struggle with that more than probably anything in this whole thing, that can I really do it again?
Mm.
And that's
So
um
what do you do to overcome those thoughts in your head?
well, I have this necklace that after Rockstar had been out a year, it's got the number of words in Rockstar, and I wear it. I never take it off unless I'm having an MRI or something like, or a massage. I have to take it off for a massage, and I do touch it a lot. So it's sort of a touchstone for me that I remember that. But I have like when I'm writing a first draft, I keep a post-it note next to my computer that says you have permission to suck, because the I'm sort of a frustrated perfectionist. I want to be perfect, but I'm just not. And I'm a little bit lazy too, so I don't really put in the effort sometimes to be perfect. Um,
I don't think you're lazy. From what
you
I
know,
hear, you're not lazy. So that's a lie. That's
but
some belief you created that is
yeah,
not
well, that's
true.
probably that's so true.
Fake news.
Yes. So when I really just focus on that, I don't have that I can this first draft can suck because I can fix it. Like in my mind, battling against this fear is that I've proven 7 times that I can fix a bad first draft, and while yes, I'm fearful that I won't be able to do it again, there is the knowledge and kind of the certainty that, yeah, I can, but it is a constant battle for me. I really, that if I struggle with anything, that is the biggest thing I struggle. Well, I do struggle with a lot of stuff, but that's the biggest thing I struggle with is, can I do it again? And I just put out a book a little over a month ago, and I haven't started the next book because there's, I sort of have to go through this thing, can I do it? It is a birthing process. Like, am I ready to go through this emotional journey of writing this book? Because like one day my daughter was during the pandemic, she was here, she had a baby and they were here, but her room is right next to mine. And I just was like, oh, this sucks. And she poked her head out and she's like, are you at that part in this book now? Because there's like, she knows there's like, at some point I'm like, this book is the worst thing that has ever been written in the whole history of the world. And then, you kind of get past that point. So it's just really emotional. And it takes me, it takes a lot of mental energy, not just like to create words, but to get through the process of writing. And so, it's tough and I have to work on it every day. I mean, I don't write every day, but I do have to mentally work on that every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, not everything is going to be perfect because at some point it'll be a lesson, right? It'll
Right.
be something that you have to learn. That's what kind of as a, recovering perfectionist, I've learned to
Yes.
to reframe a lot of stuff, but I know it's hard
Right.
when you're in the midst of doing that work. Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard. And like I said, you don't realize how negative you are until you start trying to be positive. And so, I mean, just that kind of battle of staying at a frequency that is attracting good things as opposed to spiraling down into kind of sometimes, which is my normal, I kind of I love my family and they're awesome and so super supportive, but they're pretty limited. They have a lot of limiting beliefs and I've had to kind of crawl out of that a little bit.
Yeah.
And
You mean your kind of adult family? Like,
yes, my adult
yes.
family.
Yeah.
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 And because they're from small town, I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it's just lack of knowledge or lack of experience, and so that is how I'm conditioned though a little bit, like
Or not reading enough self-help books.
well, that's true too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but I'm inspired. Like I get so inspired by my oldest daughter. She has no limiting beliefs. Like
That's
there is
great.
nothing, and I get inspired by my other two kids because they really do things with, even if they are fearful, they don't act like they're fearful. Like they really do just take those chances. And I love that. I
Yeah, I
love
think that
that.
comes more with adulthood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
I
didn't
don't
see
know.
it. I
When you
didn't
like
see
are
it,
in the
but
real world, but anyways, yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking about, because you have to be very creative to, you
mhm,
know, get those creative juices flowing. I remember Lady Gaga. I think I heard this from Lady Gaga once, and it was very interesting because, she's talking about as a songwriter that
mhm,
she has dry spells and
mhm.
that can be like really frustrating, but you kind of
Yeah,
have to, you know, be going, you have to be in the flow when you get to the point where, you're ready. So it's like, that's,
right.
I think what sounds like is the hard thing is like,
Yes,
waiting for that, being in the right moment where your creative juices are
right,
flowing the most to be
right.
ready.
And for me, I'm better when I'm in the story. I'm a kind of a discovery writer. Like I usually know the beginning, I know the end, I know some things in the middle, some funny things I want to happen. But my books are real, like they're funny, but they'll also make you happy cry. Like they're a little, I take you on an emotional ride. And so I'm always better when I'm in the story. But if I get stuck, that fear keeps me out of the story sometimes. And so, I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of
How
a
do I have a question because I have a feeling or belief that we're a very because this is based on my own experience, that
Yeah.
we are a very doing society, right?
Yeah.
Doing.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
for the creativity, because I used to always say I'm not creative. I don't have a creative bone in my body, but everybody has
Yeah.
creativity because we all had it when we were
Sure.
little. And
Right.
so I've learned that in order for things for ideas to come, for my imagination to flow, that I have to stop the
Mhm.
doing,
Yes. Yeah.
and when we're like moms and we have a job and
Mhm.
we're trying to do side hustle stuff, it's like we're constantly running down our task list. And so that's,
Right.
I don't know if you experience that, with 3 kids, but like finding the quiet times to just, you know, get into your thoughts is, I think,
Right.
so key.
Yes. I'm fortunate because when I started, my youngest was like really that seriously writing at 50. She was a senior in high school. So they've kind of been gone. But I also have 6 grandchildren. Like I went from 1
Oh,
to 6 in a year. In a
oh
year.
my gosh. Did somebody have
And
twins?
no,
Oh my
my
gosh.
my youngest so my youngest daughter had a baby the day before we went into lockdown. And so they were here. Well, my oldest daughter found out she was pregnant 3 months before we went into lockdown. So she got pregnant, but they also foster. And so we have 3 long-term foster granddaughters that will be hopefully be with us forever. And so, yeah, they all came within a year. Like I had one and
Wow.
then I had 6. I make my own stockings. I was just I was just an absolute nervous wreck last year trying to get all those stockings made.
Oh, I love
Because
that. My kids, a neighbor, actually the mother of a
yes,
neighbor from when
uh,
they were like that first house we lived in where we
yes,
were when they were born,
yeah,
she made them the best ever stockings. They're stretchy. Like I like them because
yes,
they stretch. They're crocheted, so they
yeah. You
stretch.
can
It
put a
gives,
lot in
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I tell you, they still put them on their mantles. They're almost
yeah,
40. they
yeah,
it's I love it. I love it so much.
yeah.
And
Our mantle
it's so hard.
sags.
It's so hard to find
Yeah,
those.
it is.
I'm gonna
It
have to
is. And
make them myself.
oh, well, I mean, like our mantle sags. I'm gonna have to do some. Well, it doesn't. I have them on like a rod because my mantle's a weird shape. But I'm gonna have to get a thicker rod this year because they were just sagging last year. But so all of that say like try to write comedy, romantic comedy during a pandemic.
Oh
That's fun
yeah.
when nothing's funny. And I'm an extrovert. So, like when my daughter had her baby, and she was here. So she's snuggled in and nestling with her baby, and everything. My husband's more of an introvert than anything. He's all snuggled in, and I am chewing through the drywall trying to get out of this house. Like, I just need to be around people. And I am people deprived right now. Like I think that's one of the reasons I'm having trouble starting this book is just that the nutrients that I get from being around people, I don't have them. I'm going to go to my first conference in 2.5 weeks. So I'm vaccinated, booster, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I kind of feel the same way. I'm
yeah,
extrovert, but I get a lot of, the virtual gets
yes.
me,
It's good.
yeah.
My co-host on the podcast that I co-host, she said yesterday, yeah, I see it. She said, when we get on the podcast, you're kind of like, hey, how are you? And by the end, you can just see you've kind of come alive because of just interaction and talking. It's how I get my energy. And so it's been hard. This has been a hard year and a half for
Where's the
me.
conference you're going to?
It's called the 20 Books to 50K conference. And
And
so
where
I'm speaking there, and it's in
oh,
Vegas. Yeah.
oh,
So
fun.
yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be fun. But yeah, so it's been tough. But what Lady Gaga says is true. Like you do have creative seasons. However, one of the things that makes it hard, like for me, because I'm self-published author and this is my business, since how I make my money, is that sometimes I have to write even when I'm not feeling particularly creative. And that comes in with that crappy first draft. I just have to get words on the page. I can fix them. I just have to get words on the page. So
That's so
yeah.
great. So yeah,
But
so did you ever, when you were younger as a kid, did you like to write? Was there
no,
anything
hated it.
that like, you know, what do you
No,
think, how do you think that came up in later
I
in life?
think, well, what happened, all the reading I was doing, and I was reading, paranormal stuff, and I read a lot of historical stuff, love historical romance. But a friend of mine had suggested this book by Lisa Kleypas called Sugar Daddy. And I was like, I am not, and this, I didn't have a Kindle. I'm like, I'm not going to the bookstore and buying a book called Sugar Daddy. Like, I'm just not doing it. But she was like, you got to read it. You got to read it. Well, at the local Walgreens, they had the hardback for $5 and it was right next to the register. So I just thought, well, I can get it and get out. I didn't have to, I didn't have to walk around with Sugar Daddy in my hands. And
Yeah.
so I read that book and it was so great. It really was just so great. And I closed out and went, oh, wow, that was one of the best books I'd read at that point. So I was at Barnes and Noble and a lady was in the romance section with me. And I said, can I suggest a book? And she said, sure. And so I suggested the book. And she said, well, let me suggest one to you. And so she pointed me to a book by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. And Susan Elizabeth Phillips is kind of known as the queen of rom-com. And so she had this football series. So she said, this is my favorite, but it's one of the middle ones, but you can read them. It's kind of like mine. You can read them in any order. So I brought the book home and I'm here by myself and I start reading and I am laughing so hard. I have to put the book down to go wipe my eyes. I'm crying. I'm laughing so hard. And I'm sitting there and I realize this is the first time I've laughed like this in a couple of years, like really and truly. And it was at that point that I thought, I would love to make someone feel this way. I
Aw.
still didn't think about writing a book, but just knowing how healing that was. And so when it came time, when I thought, I'll write this book for Jennifer, I knew it would be a funny book because that's what I wanted to do. And so it never occurred to me to write anything other than something that would make people laugh. And
That is so neat. It was
really,
like in the season that you were sad and
yeah,
the universe was like sent you
yep.
that. That's so
And
amazing. And
I know, and
rom-com, I
what's
assume, is romantic comedy?
romantic comedy? Yeah,
Okay.
romantic comedy. So there's, in romance, the couple, the romance that's the main story. And so, and it has a happy ending. And really during that season when I was so sad, like I wanted a happy ending. And if you gave me a book without a happy ending, we were done being friends. Like I could not deal with that.
Yeah, I
So
guess 50 Shades of Grey could be constituted as a romance novel, you know?
yes, it is a
Yeah.
romance. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a series, which is pretty unusual for romance, like to have the same couple throughout.
Oh, got it.
That, I mean, it's not unusual. That does happen a lot, but
Are you
that's not
are
what
you somebody who is loves love
I
too?
do love love. I
Yeah.
do love
Me
love, but
too.
I'm also kind of a realist too. So that my realist kind of fights with me sometimes when I'm writing some stuff. I'm like, oh come on. Like in my third book, the grandfather mortgages his house to pay to so she can start this homemade soap business. She has no experience in business. She was an ex-child star. I mean, in the real world, that's the worst possible thing you could do. In romance land, it's beautiful. So it's just like you just have to kind of let go of some of your realistic expectations. And it's a beautiful moment in that story. But in real life, I would probably advise people not to do that. So, it's just kind of funny. And
So you're
I just love a happy ending. I mean, I just love a happy ending. I
Yeah,
love
me
that
too.
feeling at the end of a book when you're like, oh, just, oh, and you don't want to let go of those characters. I mean, that's the best.
Yeah, that's why I didn't like, I mean, I loved the movie, but at the end I was like, I can't even remember the name of it. Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense. The one
Oh
I see dead
yeah.
people. I see dead
Yes.
people. And I was like, oh, I was
Oh,
like
I know.
so like I was one of those people that was like, oh,
I
at the
know.
end.
I was bought in 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I think what I would, the thing is that starting this whole thing so late in life, like if we had, my husband and I have talked about this many times, if we had not moved from Austin, I would have never done this. I would have never stopped writing or started writing, because I had my life and my routine. It was only when I was thrown out of that that I had to find something else. And I mean, like my mother, she always has, never in a million years would I have
Hmm.
thought. My English teacher from high school was like, "What?" I mean, but she's read my books and she loves them. But
Yeah.
it's just like, had that thing not happened to me, that I really, I had a good attitude. Like I was the good wife. Like I was like, I'm gonna be, we're doing this together. I get why we had to do this, but it was devastating. I mean, it was just emotionally devastating for me. And if that had never happened, I would not have been writing. And everyone knows it. I mean, it's just, everyone knows it.
Yeah, I bet your husband's so happy now. He probably felt really
Oh
horrible
my
in that
gosh.
process.
Last Thanksgiving, we my daughter was she gave everybody beans, and we had to go around the table, and however many beans you had to say something you're thankful for. But she had a lot of beans. But when it got to my husband, he said, "I'm thankful for Jami Albright," and he started crying, because Jami Albright's a pen name. But I mean, he started crying because it's just changed everything. It's changed me in good ways, some not great ways. Like I'm in my head a lot, and that's hard for him sometimes, because I'm constantly thinking about story or my ads or business or whatever. And also financially, it's just sort of changed things for us. And he's the best. I mean, he's just the best. One of the times I with the second book, I had to get it to the editor, but I was still working, and I had to work half a day on a Sunday, and I knew I had to finish the book, but I also had to clean the house because it was time for cleaning the house. And when I got home, he had cleaned the whole house. So all I had to do was sit down and write. I mean, that he's never read one of my books, but that's the way he supports me in every other way besides reading my books. But he's not
I
my audience.
Yeah, and I hope you
So
have a cleaning lady now.
I do now. I did.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I got. I will tell you, that was the
Good.
first thing I got, because I
Good.
was like, "Oh no, no, no."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been a longer episode, but so
oh, I'm so
worth
sorry.
it. So no, no. I mean, nothing. I mean, that's what happens when you have a good
Yeah,
conversation. I mean, I wasn't
yeah,
gonna like, "Oh, I don't want to cut it short. It's like amazing
yeah.
to talk to you. I love it. And I think it's gonna inspire a lot of people to like,
Yes.
what I see in you is that even though you were sad, you
Mm-hmm.
you at least took some action. You didn't know what
Mm-hmm.
you wanted, but at least you took
Mm-hmm.
action to walk into a bookstore and get a book, and didn't
Mm-hmm.
to talk to somebody in a bookstore. Oh,
Yeah.
in a way, that's kind
Yeah.
of like you were giving a gift to somebody just by saying, "Hey,
Yes.
I really liked this book," and then you got
Yes.
something back in return that took you down like a path. It's like
Right.
I just
Right.
love, and I people, the only thing that I would have to say from what Jamie's story is if you're sad in a place where you are a little stuck, just take one action to do
Yep.
something different, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I agree.
then lay in bed, right? Then
Yes.
mope around the house, and and
Mm-hmm.
we are in a pandemic, but you can put a mask on
Yeah.
and go out. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So, yeah. So just as we close, just tell me what you think living a not your average life is and how you exemplify that. I've started asking this question and I like what it brings up.
Yeah. I think that for me, it is, you know, doing things even if it scares me. Like just kind of facing that fear and taking that step. I mean, really a lot of times it is just that one thing you do, and you see that it's just not that scary. But and then every day pretty much I have to face that fear every day. And sometimes I do better than others, but I think that's kind of normal. But for me, it's choosing to do things even if they scare me. So
Yeah. That's a common theme. And
yeah.
it's
Is it?
clear that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a common thing because, we let fear hold us
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think especially when we get older, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easier to do because we
Right.
have all these, we talk ourselves, into the
Right.
fact that I don't have enough time left. So yeah.
Yeah. Right. Don't have enough. Well, and that was another reason I decided to do indie publishing instead of traditional publish because, sometimes you can go back and forth with agents and editors and stuff for 10 years. I'm like, I don't have 10 years. Like I got to get this done right now. So yeah, I just, you're just never too old. You're just never too old. You're never too old to learn stuff. There's YouTube. You can learn how to do anything on YouTube. I'm telling you that right now. Anything. So you can do it,
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
is.
I was actually talking to my son-in-law today. He actually works for me. He's like my right-hand man. And, I said to him, we were doing math problems and I was Googling like, what's the percentage of blah, blah, blah. And I said, if the electricity ever went down, I would not be able to do a math problem. Google tells me everything.
Yeah, there's a lot I wouldn't be able to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So thank you so
Well,
much for coming here. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I love it. And let's keep in touch. And yeah,
oh yeah, I'd
tune
love
in.
to. I'd love
And
to.
the Wish I Know Then Writers podcast
Yes.
is, yeah, where you can
Yes,
find
it's
Jami.
Wish I'd
Yeah.
Known Then for Writers podcast, and you can find my books on Amazon, or you can go to my website, jamialbright.com, and find out just about everything you want to know
Yeah.
and
And
get
the
a free
link will be in
book.
the show notes too. Yeah.
Great.
And
Great.
what'd you say? Free book?
Yeah, you get a free book. When you go to my website, you can get a free book.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
that's a real carrot. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for that.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
And I
You're
guess you
welcome.
just like go to Amazon and search on Runaway
Yeah,
Bride
or
or
just
what?
Jamie Albright and all that,
Okay.
because it's
All right.
not so I have the brides books, and then I have the small town royalty books. The first one is Homecoming King, which is free for the next 5 days.
Ooh.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, Homecoming. Yeah, it
well,
won't go
by the
out
time this
until
airs, yeah. Yeah.
yes, boo. And then the next one is Duking It Out, and then the one I'm thinking about writing, which I'll start pretty soon, is Queen of Hearts. So they're all
Oh.
kind of royalty names.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, all
Okay.
small town,
Yeah.
all the quirky, funny small town stuff.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Yeah,
thanks so much.
thank
And
you.
thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.